Welcome to the sixth lecture on representations of finite groups. In this lecture, we are going to prove the uniqueness theorem. Recall that by Marshke's theorem, every representation of a finite group is equivalent to a direct sum of finitely many irreducible representations. But the theorem, as we stated, didn't say whether the decomposition is unique or not. Today we are going to show that the decomposition in Marshke's theorem is indeed unique. And to achieve that, we need to build up some more machinery. So we are going to introduce what are called characters of representations and class functions. So let's begin with character of a representation. So what is the definition? Let phi from G to GLNC be a representation of a group G. Then the character we denote it by chi phi of phi is the function chi phi from the group G into complex numbers given by the trace by chi phi. It will act on a group element. And how do we define it? Then phi is a representation, so phi G is a n by n complex matrix. Take the trace of that matrix. So trace of phi sub G. Okay, very simple-minded definition. And so if phi ij denote the coordinate functions, of the representation phi, then chi phi of G, which is trace of phi G, which is just summation of phi I of G I from 1 to n. Okay, just the trace of the corresponding matrix. All right, and some observations here. If phi from G to C star, that is GL1C, is the degree 1 representation, then we simply denote chi phi is just same as the phi, right? Because the 1 by 1 matrix. So what we are going to observe in this class, that the characters encode all the information about the representation. Let's begin with some basic observations. A proposition. So if phi from G to GLNC is a representation, then chi phi, when you evaluate it at the identity of the group, what do you get? You actually get the degree of the representation. Degree of the representation phi. Right, that is something very obvious, because what is chi phi of 1? Chi phi of 1 by definition is trace of phi of 1, but phi is a group homomorphism, so therefore it is same as trace of the identity matrix of n by n size, which is precisely n, which is equal to degree of the representation. Right. Another interesting observation that is very important actually is the following proposition. Characters of equivalent representations are the same. So if phi and say psi from G to GLNC are two equivalent representations, then the characters are same. Then chi phi is same as chi of psi. Proof. So because phi and psi are equivalent representations, that means there is an invertible matrix in GLNC such that one is phi of little g is conjugate of psi of little g by A. So there exists an element A belonging to G, L and C such that phi sub g can be written as A inverse psi sub g A. Okay. For all G in the group G. But then what is the trace of phi g? Trace of phi g, this matrix is by definition same as trace of A inverse psi g A. But we know that trace of AB is same as trace of BA for any two square matrices A and B, right? So therefore, if we call this say A and call this as B, then trace of A inverse psi g A is same as trace of psi g A into A inverse. But matrix multiplication is associative, that is same as trace of psi g for every G in G. Alright, but this by definition is chi phi of little g, and this by definition is chi psi of little g. So thus, if two representations are equivalent, their characters are the same. Next we define what is a class function. Definition: let G be a group, then in G you have the conjugacy classes. So what is a class function on group? It is a function on the group G, let's say complex valued in our case, which is constant on conjugacy classes. So let G be a group, a function f from G to C is called a class function. Basically it should be conjugacy class, here mean the conjugacy class function if f of x is same as f of y inverse xy for all x and y in the group G. Alright, so let's see some examples. Okay, let us take G to be the GLNC itself. That is a good example. Okay, so can you think of some class functions on this, some functions on GLNC which is constant on conjugacy classes? So you can see that, look at this determinant map from GLNC to C. Okay, determinant of A is the determinant of A, determinant of the matrix A. All right, and we know that determinant of, take any conjugate of an element of a matrix here, so that is B inverse AB. But we know determinant is multiplicative, so determinant of B inverse AB is determinant of B inverse determinant of A into determinant of B, but determinant of B inverse is same as determinant of B, right? So, and you are in complex number, it get cancelled, that is same as determinant of A. Okay, so determinant is a class function on the general linear group of n by n matrices over C. Another one is what we just saw a few minutes back, the trace. So again take G to be GLNC. Okay, then the trace map from GLNC to C given by trace of any matrix A is the trace of A. A is class function. Why? That we already saw, so nevertheless let me write it again. So trace of B inverse AB is same as trace of AB into B inverse that is just same as trace of A. Now using representation we can define many class functions on a group. Okay, so here is a proposition. Let phi from G to G, L, N, C a representation of G. The character of phi is a class function. Then chi phi, which is a map from G to C, is a class function. Okay. So we saw that trace is a class function on GLNC. So given any representation of a group G, when we compose with the trace operator, it turns out to be a class function. The proof is essentially the same, what we have already written here. Okay, so look at chi phi of H inverse GH. This by definition is trace of phi of H inverse GH. Okay, but phi is a group homomorphism, that is same as trace of phi of H inverse, phi of G and phi of H. But phi is a homomorphism, this is same as phi H whole inverse, and we know that trace is class function, so this is same as trace of phi sub G, which is actually chi phi of G. Okay, so thus the character chi phi is a class function. Before moving to the proof of the uniqueness theorem, we need this intermediate result. Let's call it a theorem. So let phi and psi be two irreducible representations of a group G. Then the characters of phi and psi satisfy this orthogonality relation. Inner product is given by this, so it is 1 if phi is equivalent to psi, and is 0 if phi is not equivalent to psi. Very neat result. Okay, so let us prove this. The proof is just a matter of computation. Okay, so let us say phi is a map from G to G, L, N, C, and psi is a map from G to G, L, M, C. Okay, and without loss of generality, we can assume that they are unitary representations, because every representation is equivalent to a unitary representation. All our groups are finite here, and equivalent representations have the same character, so the outcome will not really change. All right, so then what is this inner product? Chi phi, chi psi. Let us recall the formula. So it is 1 over order of the group G, summation as G, little g run in the group element, and chi phi of G into chi psi of G bar. But what is that? Let's write it here. 1 by order of the group G, summation G in the group G. But now recall that character is a trace, so in terms of the coordinate functions of the representations phi and psi, this is just summation phi I of G, I from 1 to the degree of the representation, which is n, into summation psi I of G, well, let us call it J, and J going from 1 to M. Okay, and the bar over this. All right. So this sum is finite. We can do some, we can bring this summation over I and j outside. So it becomes summation I from 1 to n, summation j from 1 to m, 1 by order of the group G, and then over the group element it is given by G in the group G, phi I of G times psi jj of G bar. But what is this? I from 1 to n, summation j from 1 to m. Alright, now recall that this summation is again the same inner product of, now the functions are the coordinate functions phi I and psi jj. So this is the inner product of phi I, okay, and psi jj. Now from the previous lecture, recall the Schur orthogonality relations. What does it say? Schur orthogonality relation said that if phi and psi are inequivalent, irreducible unitary representations, then the inner product of their coordinate functions is 0. Okay, so the first case will follow. If they are inequivalent, then this is 0. All right. So by Schur orthogonality relations, if phi is not equivalent to psi, then the inner product chi phi with chi psi, okay, which is given by this sum, is summation over this inner product of coordinate functions. This turns out to be 0. All right. And now if phi is equivalent to psi, then without loss of generality we can assume that actually phi is psi, because phi is equal to psi means psi can be written as A inverse phi psi, phi A for some A, right? And so therefore their characters are the same, and here we want to conclude about the characters. So we can assume that phi is actually equal to psi. But if phi equal to psi, then again by Schur orthogonality relations, in that case phi I and phi jj, that inner product survives only if I equal to j. Then by Schur orthogonality relations again, inner product of chi phi with chi psi, all right, which is given by this formula. Okay, now taking phi equal to psi, this is inner product of phi I and phi jj, but we know that that is again equals to 0 if I not equal to j, all right, and is 1 by n if I equal to j. So therefore in that case this becomes so therefore there is only one sum, so this is basically just one sum. Let us say I from 1 to n and phi I and phi I. All right, but in that case this by Schur orthogonality relation turns out to be 1 by n, and you are adding it n times, so it is just 1. Okay, so this completes the proof of this orthogonality result on characters of irreducible representations. So by Maschke's theorem, we know that every representation of a finite group is equivalent to a direct sum of finitely many irreducible representations. All right. So the number of times a particular irreducible representation appears as a direct summand of the given representation is called multiplicity. So let us define it formally. So let phi from G to G, L and C be a representation And suppose that phi is equivalent to m1 times the representation phi1, m2 times the representation phi2, and let us say mk times the representation phi k, where these mi are non-negative integers and phi I are irreducible representations of G. Now if an mi is positive, then we say that phi I is an irreducible constituent of phi with multiplicity mi. So some observations about this. So note that for each little g in the group G, the matrix of phi G, the matrix phi G equivalent to this matrix, block matrix. Okay, so the matrix of m1 times phi1, so it is going to be phi1 and so on phi1, and this is m1 times, and this will happen for each mi. So phi k, okay, and this is mk. Let us write the group element here, G. All right. In fact, because the representations are equivalent, so we know that what is character of phi. Character of phi is same as it will act on a group element G, but that is same as character of this decomposition, okay, the right hand side. All right, but which is just trace, okay, and trace of the sum is sum of the traces, so that is simply same as m1 times character of phi1 acting on G plus so on mk times character of phi k of G. That is, character of your given representation is a linear combination of characters of its irreducible constituents. So chi phi can be written as m1 times chi of phi1 plus so on plus mk times chi of phi k. Okay. So this suggests something. So we know that all the characters are complex valued functions from group G into C. All right, and in fact they are class preserving functions. And I am saying that character of any representation can be written as linear combination of characters of its irreducible constituents. So therefore, if you know all the irreducible representations of a given group, you write down their characters. So let us set some terminology here. Character of an irreducible representation, we call it irreducible character. So then you have these irreducible characters, and what is turning out is character of any representation of that group then is just a linear combination of characters of its irreducible characters. Okay, and in fact the coefficients are precisely the multiplicity with which the corresponding representation appear as a direct summand of the given representation. We can now prove the uniqueness theorem. So let phi1 phi 2, so on, phi k be the complete list of representatives of the equivalence classes of irreducible representations of your group G. Of a group G. Okay, and suppose that I from G to GLNC is a representation such that phi is equivalent to m1 times phi 1. So this notation m1 phi 1 means direct sum of m1 copies of phi 1. Okay, so m1 phi 1 direct sum m2 phi 2 direct sum so on mk phi k. Okay, then my claim is that this decomposition is unique. Every representation of a finite group has such a decomposition is guaranteed by Mashke's theorem. But what we are proving in this theorem is the uniqueness. That is, such a decomposition is always unique. To show that that is unique, we need to just show that multiplicity of a particular irreducible summand is uniquely determined. The multiplicity mi is simply the inner product of character of phi with character of the ith irreducible constituent. Okay. Proof. So proof is quite immediate. So from the preceding discussion, we know that character of your representation phi is same as m1 times character of phi 1 plus so on plus mk times character of phi k. Alright. Then if we take the inner product of character of the representation with character of its irreducible constituent phi I, then what is this? This is the inner product of m1 chi phi 1 mk chi phi k with chi of phi I, and from the orthogonality relations, characters of irreducible representations, they are orthonormal. Okay, so therefore the inner product of any chi phi j with chi phi I will survive only when I equal to j, and in the case I equal to j, it is precisely 1. So therefore it is precisely mi times 1, that is mi. Thus, so therefore this decomposition has to be unique, because the coefficients are completely determined by this inner product of character of phi with character of phi I. Let us get back to class preserving functions. So let Z of Cg denote the set of all class preserving functions on the group G. Then we have the following observations about the structure of ZCG. So it turns out that the set of all class preserving functions on G is a linear subspace of Cg, and the dimension of this as a vector space over C is precisely the number of conjugacy classes in the group G. Okay, so for the first assertion, take two functions in ZCG and two scalars alpha 1 alpha 2 in C. Then one can check that alpha 1 f1 plus alpha 2 f2 acting on conjugate of the element G is same as alpha 1 f1 plus alpha 2 f2 acting on the same element G. This just follows because f1 and f2 are both class preserving functions. Okay, this happens for all G and H in the group G. This shows that ZCG is in fact a subspace of the C vector space CG. So let C1, C2 so on, let us say CK denote the conjugacy classes of the group G. Of the group G, and define this delta Ci from G to C by the following. So delta Ci will act on a group element G, and how does it act? Is an indicator function of the set Ci. So set it as 1 if the element G falls in this conjugacy class Ci, and 0 if G doesn't fall there, does not belong to Ci. Okay, so these are precisely K functions. By definition, these delta Ci's are class preserving functions. Thus, by definition, this delta Ci's fall in ZCG. Okay, further, for any function f in ZCG, f can be written as this linear combination summation f of Ci into delta Ci I from 1 to k. Okay, let's check it. Take any group element, apply f on that, so it's some complex number. So that group element lie in a unique conjugacy class, let us say Ci, right? Then delta Ci of that group element is just 1. Okay, and that group element fall in Ci, so f of this whole set Ci is just the same entry, same complex number, right? So therefore f can be written as a linear combination of these functions delta Ci's. So they span this linear subspace ZCG. To show that these functions delta C1, delta C2, delta Ck, they are linearly independent, we will show that they are in fact orthogonal. So consider the inner product delta Ci with delta Cj. This is the inner product on the group algebra. Consider this. So this is by definition 1 by order of the group G summation G in the group G delta C of group G into, let us, delta Ci of G into delta Cj of G bar. And what is this? Now note, each element of the group G lie in a unique conjugacy class. Conjugacy classes form a partition of the group, right? So therefore, if I is not equal to J, then G, first of all, the group element G may not lie in the conjugacy classes Ci and Cj. In that case, this entry is 0. And suppose that the group element lie in the conjugacy class Ci and I not equal to J. In that case, delta Cj of G is 0. Right? So the only possibility is that when when I equal to J, okay, and when I equal to J and G falls inside the conjugacy class, then the value is 1. Okay, and if the group element does not fall in the conjugacy class, then that is 0. So it is simply order of Ci divided by order of the group G. If Ci equal to Cj and 0 otherwise. Is a basis of the Z of Cg. Okay, and hence dimension of ZCG is precisely the number of conjugacy classes, which is k here. Let us write an interesting consequence of the preceding observation about the structure and the dimension of the space of all class preserving functions on the group G and the uniqueness theorem. So the result is there are at most CLG many equivalence classes of irreducible representations of G, where CLG is the number of conjugacy classes in G. Notice that this is a refinement of my statement in a previous video that the number of equivalence classes of irreducible representations of the group G is at most order of the group. In fact, later on we are going to show that it is precisely the number of conjugacy classes in the group G. Alright, let's see how to prove this. So we showed that characters of irreducible representations form an orthonormal set in the space of all class preserving functions on the group G. And just now we showed that the dimension of ZCG is precisely the number of conjugacy classes in the group G. Also, we know that equivalent representations have the same character and inequivalent representations have distinct characters. Therefore, the number of equivalence classes of irreducible representations of the group G is at the most the number of conjugacy classes in the group G. This proves the corollary. Let us conclude this lecture by something more about ZCG. Proposition. So ZCG is center of the group algebra. Algebra CG. Recall that CG is an algebra, that it has a multiplication. So recall that the multiplication in CG is the convolution and is given by F1 star F2 of an element X, group element X, is summation Y in the group G F1 XY inverse times F2 of Y. Okay, and I think I had given it as a homework for students to check that with this multiplication CG is in fact a algebra. Okay, so what turns out is that the space of all class preserving functions on the group G is in fact center of this algebra. That is, it consists of all those functions which commute with every other functions in CG with respect to convolution. And this also justifies the notation ZCG. So let F belong to ZCG be a class preserving function. I want to show that it is in the center of the group algebra. So take any element in the group algebra and show that it commute with F with respect to convolution. Let us say T in C of G. Okay. Then T star F acting on X by definition is summation Y in the group G T of XY inverse times F of Y. Alright, but this is same as summation Y in the group G T of XY inverse. Now F is given to be in ZCG, which is the space of all class preserving functions. So F is constant on conjugacy classes, so I can replace Y by a conjugate of Y. So that is same as F of XY X inverse. Alright. Now what you do is do a little change of variable. Setting Z equals to XY inverse, we see that T star F of X, which was this rightmost expression, becomes the following. This is simply If you like, you can rewrite it. This is same as Z in the group G and f of xz inverse times T of Z, and that by definition is convolution f star T of element x. Okay, so given an element f in Z of CG, we have shown that it commutes with every element of group algebra, so it's in center of the group algebra. Suppose that f lie in the center of the group algebra. Okay, my claim is that f is then a class preserving function. So consider f of product of two element gh. Then I can write it as summation y in the group G f of gy inverse into delta h inverse of y. Alright, but this in terms of convolution, this is same as f star delta h inverse of g, where delta is the indicator function, so where delta of any z acting on any x is just 1 if x is z and 0 otherwise. You can take it as a homework and show that the set of all indicator functions at elements of the group G is in fact a basis for the group algebra CG as a vector space. This is another proof showing that dimension of CG is precisely out of the group G. But on the other hand, I am given that it's in center, so this is same as delta H inverse star F of G, right? And now I open it up, this product, that is same as summation y in the group G delta H inverse of gy inverse into f of y. Alright, and by definition of delta H inverse, this sum will survive only when H inverse is gy inverse, and this shows that this should be just f of H into G. So thus what we have shown is f of gh is same as f of hg for all g and h in the group G. But this implies that f is class preserving, because hence f of any conjugate g h g inverse, by this property it should be same as f of hg inverse times g. View this as g as one element, hg inverse as second element. It should be same as hg inverse times g, which is just same as f of h. And this f lie in z of cg. Alright, I will stop here. In the next video, I will do some computations with representations of the symmetric group S3.